Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. I've been very excited about this. Uh, for the past 2 years, I've actually made my living by doing paleontology outreach live streams, and I'm excited to share with you what I've learned during that time. And I'm honestly a little bit nervous about this. I'm not used to giving prepared remarks like this. I'm used to speaking off the cuff, which is what I do every weekday. So we'll see how this goes. Let's jump into it. I want to make sure that I've got enough time for Q&A here. So, brief introduction here. By the end of this talk, my hope is that you'll have a clearer understanding about what true science outreach is and what it isn't, and why that distinction is so important. You'll better understand how live streaming can be a highly effective means of science outreach, and also how it's possible to broadcast fieldwork live to an audience over the internet. And I also want to do a bit of a disclaimer here. Because of the nature of this presentation, there's going to be lots of logos and company names and stuff like that. These are not meant to be promotions. And because of the nature of this work, I'm going to be speaking from personal experience here. That's kind of unavoidable, but it does run the risk of maybe sounding like crass self-promotion. So please understand that self-promo is not my intent here. Whether you're a student or an early career paleontologist or involved in outreach, I hope this information is useful to you. And I hope that it will be particularly relevant to anyone with a kind of non-standard career path like me. So with that said, who am I? My name is Danny Anduza, and I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And my research primarily focuses on dinosaur evolution, functional morphology, and behavior. And from what I can tell, when you query different dinosaur paleontologists, roughly half of them recall being obsessed with dinosaurs from a very young age. And that was certainly the case with me. My parents joke that I made up my mind that I would become a paleontologist on the same day I realized that I couldn't grow up to be a dinosaur. Because, of course, there was an attempt. My grandmother actually made that Halloween costume for me. She sewed it herself. Some sort of indeterminate thyreophoran. But anyway, later on, when I got a bit older, when I started high school, I wrote to the Museum of Paleontology at the University of California, Berkeley, to ask if I could volunteer there. Now, UCMP had no formal volunteer program, but I will be forever indebted to Dr. Patricia A. Holroyd. You see her right there, the vertebrate collections manager who took pity on me and became my mentor during those years. And between you and me, sometimes I would sneak out of school to catch the train to Berkeley and go do collections work, prep fossil specimens, hang out with Pat and the other paleontologists there. I spent a lot of time at that museum, and that's kind of a sort of my origin story, I suppose. So after high school, given that most of you know that there are not very many dinosaurs in California, I packed up and I moved to Bozeman, Montana. And university was difficult for me. I did not grow up wealthy. I was a first-generation university student. I often felt like I didn't belong in that environment. And it was sometimes impossible to afford school, even working full-time. I'm sure that some people watching can probably relate to that. But my saving grace during all of this was fieldwork. So at Montana State and at Museum of the Rockies, I met some incredible people. I will be forever indebted to people like Jack Horner and Denver Fowler. There's Denver there at the top in the white cowboy hat. So they gave me the opportunity to do field work. They paid me to do that field work when the budget would allow for it. And I would not be here today if it were not for their support many years ago. I got to do all kinds of incredible things, digging up literally hundreds of dinosaur specimens across the state of Montana, the world's smallest and youngest T-Rex, a new chronospecies of Triceratops, a new ankylosaur from the Judith River Formation, potentially a new ceratopsian from the Judith River Formation as well. All kinds of really cool stuff. I was tremendously fortunate. And research-wise, among other things, I've been working on the functional morphology of spinosaurids, project which I really need to submit for publication soon, among others. And I was also on the team that discovered and published Triarchuncus, which is the alvarezsaurid theropod from the Hell Creek Formation, the very last known alvarezsaurid before the KPG extinction. So that's me. Now you have a sort of an idea of my paleontological bona fides and the sorts of experiences and knowledge that I bring to my live streams when I do those. Now, before we get to that stuff, let's talk a little bit about scientists and society. We're broadening out a lot here, but let's get into it. So as scientists, even though most of us are overworked and underpaid, we still come from a place of immense privilege. I believe that as scientists, we have a duty to disseminate what we've learned about the natural world to the general public. So we're going to go over 3 different topics here. Let's talk about scientists in the public eye. So let's go back to the early 20th century. I bring this up because this is a time when scientists were far more prominent members of society. So we all recognize the physicist Albert Einstein here. His work made him an international celebrity. He was perhaps the most recognizable person in the world in the early 20th century. Marie Curie, the discoverer of radium, was also immensely famous, major public figure. You may not know that the astronomer Edwin Hubble, for whom the Hubble telescope was named, was perhaps one of the most well-known people on Earth because of his discoveries. So Hollywood stars would visit his observatory and line up to look through the telescope. He even was a guest of honor at the 1937 Academy Awards. He was specially invited by the director Frank Capra, who won the award that year for Best Director for Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. Edwin Hubble was a big deal, very well known to the general public. And in paleontology, even our very own scientist adventurer Roy Chapman Andrews appeared worldwide in newsreels and gave immensely popular lectures. He was even on the cover of Time magazine. So early in the 20th century, the public was immensely interested in the discoveries which scientists were making, and scientists themselves were public figures, even celebrities, in a way that's generally not true today. So what happened? Well, much of the information here comes from this wonderful book by Sean Otto, and the case that he lays out for this big change is that the Cold War altered scientists' relationship with society, especially in the United States. So with nuclear weapons as a new looming threat to human civilization, many members of the public naturally started to become mistrustful of science and scientists after World War II. But a major accelerant in this change was the launch of the Soviet satellite Sputnik 1 in October of 1957. Sputnik was the first man-made object to reach Earth orbit, and it caused a panic in the US as Americans realized that the Soviets were pulling ahead in terms of science and technology. And the fear was that this could result in the United States being destroyed in a war against the Soviet Union. So in response, the US government massively increased funding to scientists. The National Science Foundation, NSF, budget increased dramatically in 1957 and would continue to rise. So it was a good time to get funding as a scientist. Lots and lots of money coming in, but this paradigm disincentivized doing outreach and interacting with regular people. So Sean Otto writes in The War on Science. Let me read this. I'm reading it off the screen. With tax money pouring in from a vastly expanding economy and the public respect affording authority of the white lab coat, 2 generations of scientists instead had only to impress their own university departments and government agencies to keep research funds coming their way. But they no longer had to impress the public, which was growing increasingly mistrustful of science. But this was a turning point. Scientists, by and large, had lost their relationship with the public, had stopped doing science outreach. because of Cold War funding. But then with the end of the Cold War, decades later, they lost the funding too. So the argument is that this is part of the reason for such poor science literacy in the United States. So there are 3 topics we're going to talk about here. There's 2 things that the public considers very controversial. These are hot topics, matters of debate in the general public, even if they're not matters of debate in the scientific community. Then I'm going to talk about why we as paleontologists might be able to do something about this, why we have an advantage here. So first one is evolution. As paleontologists, we study the development of life on Earth through evolution. But here in the United States especially, public acceptance of evolution is dismally low. So here's a study from 2005. If you look there, this is the blue bars there are public acceptance of evolution in a nationwide survey of all of these, I think 35 different countries. The United States is second to last. But at least we beat Turkey. Yeah. If you ever drive across the United States, chances are you will see billboards like this. This is a very common sentiment. A lot of people are very hostile toward the idea of evolution. And there's an example of this, a tweet from just the other day. I thought it's kind of a brilliant little encapsulation of this. Yeah, big thanks to Take That Darwin on Twitter, who kind of chronicles these things, doing a public service there. And of course, this extends to our government as well. Just a few days ago, our new House Speaker in the United States, second in line to the presidency, is of course an ardent young Earth creationist. So we are fighting an uphill battle as scientists in the United States when we're trying to educate people about evolution. And I probably don't have to tell you that this is also the case with climate change. And that same guy, the new Speaker of the House, also a climate change denier. So that's all bad news. Let's get a little bit of good news here. The good thing is we as paleontologists might have kind of a silver bullet here, a big advantage. Yeah, this is an article from The Guardian talking about a study that came out a few years ago, 2017, I believe it was. They looked at, well, the researchers behind this article looked at different book purchases online and people's political affiliations, and they tried to figure out people of different political persuasions, what kind of science are they interested in, and is there any overlap between, you know, both sides of the political aisle? And it turns out paleontology seems to be the one thing that both liberals and conservatives are interested in. Those are the books that both liberals and conservatives are purchasing. And so books on dinosaurs and paleontology in general were popular in both groups. So I myself am a dinosaur paleontologist, and I recognize the immense privilege that comes with that. The public is always intensely interested in dinosaurs. That's part of why I use dinosaurs in my my online science outreach through live streaming. But we might have, as paleontologists, a unique opportunity to reach out to the public using our science, because paleontology deals with both climate change and evolution, obviously. And so if we can bring people in with subjects like dinosaurs or other fossil organisms, there's a chance that we can actually make a difference there. So what are scientists currently trying to do online in order to reach out to the public? So let's talk about this a little bit. Hashtag SciComm. So I have kind of a love-hate relationship with hashtag SciComm. The dirty little secret about science communication online is that much of hashtag SciComm tends to be preaching to the converted. Whether it's through Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, much of what passes for science outreach online is mostly just speaking to people who already know that they're interested in science. And that's fine. I mean, but if you're mostly reaching out to science enthusiasts already, I don't think it's really fair to call that outreach. So please understand that I do not mean this in an accusatory way. There are many talented, hardworking, brilliant communicators in paleontology who are doing important work. And they can probably tell you that online, it can be exceptionally difficult to bring in new people from across the internet and get them to care about science. And in an already oversaturated online space, it can be nearly impossible to get new people's attention and really win over new hearts and minds. So there's an old saying, goes like this. I think it's relevant. It's kind of corny, but I think it's true. It goes, tell me something and I'll forget. Show me something and I may remember, but involve me and I'll learn. So if we really want to reach out to new audiences and involve people, how do we do that? So I can tell you how I do that. I stream on Twitch. Now, many of you are probably wondering, what is Twitch? Younger people in the audience might well be aware of it, might be familiar with it, but I'm sure not everybody here is. So I myself didn't know about Twitch until just a few weeks before I got started on there. So let's just do a brief overview so that you can better understand what I do. So twitch.tv is a video live streaming service. It's been around since about 2011. And in August 2014, Amazon purchased it for $970 million. Tremendous amount of money. It had already grown significantly at that point, but it really took off in the spring of 2020. I think we all remember what happened back then. That's actually when I started on the platform, was in May of 2020. So let's go over the numbers a little bit on Twitch, just so you can get a sense of the scale of this platform. So numbers are kind of staggering. Twitch's internal data shows that it has 31 million daily active users, and these people are mostly showing up to watch other people play video games. I also thought that this was a little strange when I first heard about it, but I realized something. This is a platform with a tremendous number of viewers. It supports video and audio, live interaction between the audience and what we call the streamer, the person broadcasting. I thought this might be a wonderful venue for true science outreach, reaching out to new audiences, getting them interested in science. So like I said, in May of 2020, I decided to take a little bit of a leap and started streaming on Twitch. And it's really gone remarkably well. So you're probably wondering, what does a paleontology live stream look like on a platform like Twitch? My channel is called Paleontologizing, and that's a long name. Not everybody can pronounce it, unfortunately, but it speaks to what I'm trying to accomplish here, which is telling people about fossil science and getting them interested in it, but emphasizing the process. What is it like to actually do fossil science? A lot of people have a misperception in the general public that science is like a collection of facts, a body of knowledge. It's like a dusty book up on a shelf somewhere. And all of us know that science is so much more than that. Largely, it's a process, a way of thinking about the world, gathering evidence, testing ideas. That's what science is. And that's what paleontology is as well. So on the day-to-day, things are always changing all the time. Live broadcasts can get kind of chaotic, and might be doing a different thing every single day of the week, because I do stream every weekday on Twitch from about, from 2 p.m. California time to at least 6 p.m., sometimes later, depending on what's going on. But some of the things that I get up to are like this. Interviews are one of them. So pretty early after I started on Twitch, I interviewed Rebecca Hunt Foster, the park paleontologist at Dinosaur National Monument. She was kind of our first big interviewee, and I'm trying to ramp up interviews right now to give the viewing audience a chance to get to know some other scientists and show them that, paleontologists, there's a tremendous diversity and a thankfully growing diversity of different paleontologists. There are almost as many different ways to be a paleontologist as there are different paleontologists. There's a lot of special events that I do as well. Here's a screenshot from my broadcast celebrating the birthday of Mary Mantell, who was likely the discoverer of Iguanodon, not always recognized as such. And I wish I also had a picture of my Mary Anning birthday stream, too. We always have a big birthday celebration for Mary Anning. It's always one of my biggest streams of the year. Always a tremendous amount of fun. And nearly every week, I do what we call Thursday Birds Day, which is a way to get viewers involved as well. People will submit pictures of birds that they took during the week as they're walking around outside. Maybe they're taking their dog for a walk and then they spotted a bird, snap a picture of that bird, submit it to the Discord, and then we go over all of those photos. It's kind of a celebration of birds in the modern world and the fact that they are living theropod dinosaurs. We talk all about the link between theropods and their avian descendants on Thursday Birds Day. And just last Tuesday, I had a special stream for International Sawfish Day. So I 3D printed a life-size sawfish rostrum. I actually have that right here. I do a lot of 3D printing as well, as you'll see in a minute. But yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity to talk about sawfish biology, conservation, and also about convergent evolution. It turns out that these saw-like rostra have actually evolved 3 separate times in different clades over the history of life so far on our planet. And so it's wonderful to be able to talk about that, the idea of convergent evolution. And then I also do things like review quizzes. So most Fridays we'll play a game of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which is fun for the viewers, but it also provides me a sense for what the viewers have learned over the past week. So, and what concepts I might need to do a better job of covering. And then, of course, there's 3D printing. Let's see if this video will work here. This is from very, very early on. I think in 2020, soon after I started streaming. This is one of my first very big 3D prints. Now they are all over my office. But this is a juvenile Tyrannosaurus skeleton that is based in part on the Chomper Rex specimen. Doesn't have a skull yet here. But people get immensely excited about 3D prints of fossil specimens. And it's a wonderful opportunity to talk about how real fossils belong in museums if they're scientifically important. But we can still, we can still kind of spread fossils around through 3D printing like this. Yeah. There we go. And here, let me really quickly show you the life-size Allosaurus skull that I finished recently as well. It's not painted yet, but I think it's pretty impressive while we're talking about 3D printing. That is right here. This was a ton of fun, and people got very, very excited about this, to the point where people were donating 3D printer filament so that I could finish it. So a wonderful teaching tool to have. But the biggest part of my streams is always Q&A. Questions and answers are the core of paleontologizing streams. I really can't emphasize that enough. Viewers come to Twitch to interact, which in my channel means asking questions. And this is how a platform like Twitch, a live streaming platform, and I want to emphasize that there are lots of other live streaming platforms as well. This is not supposed to be a promotional thing for Twitch. The cool thing about live streaming platforms is there is that live interaction between the audience and the streamer. And so there are tons and tons of questions that I get every single day, and that really is the bulk of the time there. I think a lot of people have lots and lots of questions about science, about the history of life on Earth, about extinction and evolution and the philosophy of science. So to be able to actually ask someone who works in the sciences about those things is immensely powerful as a means of outreach, especially when it's instant like that. When people get their answer right then and there, there's that connection that is really difficult to achieve on other platforms online. So yeah. Oh, and by the way, that is a phylogeny tool, onezoom.org, like an interactive tree of life. And I pull this up at least 3 or 4 times during every broadcast, probably a lot more, talking about common descent, talking about evolution, because these are concepts that a lot of people, especially in the United States, were never exposed to in school. So being able to see that and be able to revel in the wonder of it is really important. And yeah, this is a bit of a confession here. I was not able to make it to SVP this year, this past weekend, because out of all 52 weeks out of the year, SVP happened to land on the same weekend as TwitchCon, and I was on a special panel for TwitchCon with 4 other scientists and science communicators talking about doing science outreach live on Twitch. This was a ton of fun, and we're really trying to help grow the science community on Twitch. We've had some decent success so far, so this is a step in that direction. It's a real privilege to be able to do that. Oh yeah, so that's part of what I do on a given day. But I think the thing that everybody really came here today to hear about was the fieldwork live streams. So going to be running out of time soon. So let's go through this really, really quickly. This summer, I teamed up with Ethan Cowgill from Utah. He has some fieldwork that he was trying to fundraise for in the Almond Formation, late Cretaceous of Wyoming, pretty much unexplored formation. We were able to raise through my community over $7,000 to be able to fund our fieldwork, all our plaster, our food, a rock saw, the truck rental, everything else, gasoline. This all, we were able to fund it through the support of the paleontologizing community. When we're doing fieldwork live streams, when I'm doing fieldwork live streams, there's a lot of gear. Yeah, there's the solar generators, a camera, a video encoder, a microphone, a phone with a wrist strap so that you can monitor chat as people are typing in questions live from the field, a shade tarp to keep everything cool, and satellite internet is really what clinches it. That's what allows us to broadcast in the first place. So I got a Starlink dish, and it worked reasonably well this summer, even in really remote areas. And this is what the setup looks like when I was working with the Utah Geological Survey in July and August this year in the Cedar Mountain Formation, earliest Cretaceous of Utah. So you can see the Starlink there, the shade tarp, the solar generators, and then there's our quarry right there on the left. So this sort of thing is complicated to put together, and it can be expensive too, but nearly all of this equipment was actually paid for by the community. People, like I said, get immensely excited about the idea of viewing live fieldwork. And so if any of you are interested in that and have questions about how to do it, I'd love to be able to talk to you about that, either in the Q&A here, we'll see how much time we have, or feel free to tune in at twitch.tv/paleontologizing and we'll talk. And so we don't really have time for this, but I have a few different videos of some of these fieldwork live streams. There's a flip there that we're doing. Yeah, we were brave enough to actually show some jacket flips, even though those can be nerve-wracking. Anyway, you get the idea. So the possibilities are almost endless when you're streaming live from the field and you have satellite internet. It allows for a really cool kind of interaction between the viewers and us broadcasting. Yeah, and so a few metrics here. I did 11 live streams in Wyoming in the Campanian Almond Formation, which comes out to 21 total hours of broadcasting, and then 19 live streams in Utah's Cedar Mountain Formation, the earliest Cretaceous. That was 42 total hours of streaming in Utah just this summer. So overall, the season average was 300 live concurrent viewers, which is actually a lot. Because you've got to consider that when you're first starting out, it is 0 viewers when you go live, and then it continues to grow and grow, hopefully. So 300 live concurrent viewers is a tremendous number. So that plus some other data leaves us with a rough estimate of about 30,000 unique live views, different people tuning in over the course of the summer. And that might not seem like very much, just 30,000 when compared with, say, a YouTube video. But a YouTube video is just sitting there 24/7 collecting views. All of our views were live and interactive. So most of those people, when they woke up that morning, they had no idea that they would be watching a live dinosaur dig. This is true outreach in that sense, involving people in the scientific process. And as such, it can be tremendously powerful. So there's that. I think hopefully we've got a few minutes for questions and answers. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here. And I remembered to remind everyone, if you're going to be asking a question over Zoom, please turn your camera off, because I don't think there's any sort of a waiver to show people's faces. So make it audio only. And let's open it up to questions. We've actually got one right here. Patrick Wilson says, can you discuss some of the software setup that you use to stream from the field? Are you using an independent laptop for the stream, or do you use it all from your phone or tablet? So I have what we call a stream encoder. And it's a little device the camera hooks up to, and then that links up with the Starlink Wi-Fi. And so that is encoding all of the video and transferring it into a format where it can be streamed live over Twitch's servers. So it's just like a little self-contained box like that. But if you don't want to get that complicated, you can also just stream with your phone, or you can use a laptop. The possibilities are kind of endless for this sort of thing. And Eric Ames says, if you're interested in participating in these outreach and volunteer events, who is the best person to contact? You mean in my outreach and volunteer events? Yeah, feel free to contact me. You can find me on various social media under the name @Paleontologizing. Now, have we got any other questions here? And you're welcome, Eric Ames. It's funny, this feels like streaming right now, reading the chat messages, and this is kind of how it goes on any given day. Waiting for any other questions. What's the stream software that you use? OBS? Yes, when I'm streaming here from my office, I do use OBS, which is a wonderful freeware program, very powerful. And I've been using that since May of 2020. Yeah. I've got multiple different cameras that I can switch between. I've got a camera on the 3D printer. I've got a camera over my desk right here. So if we want to look at, say, a printed paper or a book or a fossil specimen or a 3D print or something like that, I've got a kind of looking down at the desk view. Yeah, OBS opens up all kinds of possibilities for this kind of thing. Yeah, good question, Scott. Thank you for that. Any other questions here? And how do you deal with VODs and such? That's a great question too. So Twitch automatically will post the VODs to their website. And for anybody wondering, VOD is an acronym, video on demand. So it's a recording of the live stream that people can watch afterward. Those are not as commonly viewed as the live streams on Twitch. The real draw is that live content because people can interact while it's live. But if you really wanted to catch a broadcast live and you happen to miss it, you can go back to the VOD and you can watch that. So those are held, I think for me, 60 days on Twitch. But then I make sure that those VODs are also uploaded to YouTube, so they'll be saved in perpetuity there. So yeah. Excellent question there, Scott. And Patrick Wilson says, how many cameras would you suggest to use in the field? Any suggestions on viewpoints or view angles? So I just use one camera because I'm a one-man show in the field. But if you are part of a team, say you're part of a, you've got the blessing of your museum to go out there and do live streams as outreach, there are complicated setups that you can put together that would use multiple cameras. I have one camera on basically a selfie stick that I walk around with. It's got a fisheye lens on it, so it can get pretty wide angle view. And yeah, it works really well with close up and with far away. And so I tried to go for simplicity in that regard. I don't have a switcher or anything like that that can switch between different cameras. Yeah. Great question, Patrick. Any other questions there? And I was really excited to be able to share some of this stuff because I do think that live streaming will be a big deal for science outreach, for museums, for different laboratories, and for individual paleontologists. And there is room in this space for people like me to actually make their living here. It seems to be increasingly difficult nowadays in academia to actually make a living. And so some of us have to try and carve out new niches. And I've been really lucky to be able to succeed in doing that. Yeah. So hopefully this will inspire other paleontologists to use live streaming as a tool for doing true science outreach. And glad to have found you on Twitch. Just saying thank you, Michael Stevens. I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you for the kind words. And Patrick says, what kinds of topics do you cover while in the field? Was it just the manual labor events like flipping and jacketing, or other topics as well? So I'd be streaming for between 2 and 6 hours. Well, more like 2 and 4 hours, honestly, in the field. And it'll be things like prospecting, like quarrying. It'll be jacketing. The jacketing streams were actually really popular this year. And for whatever reason, my camera picked up the sounds of the plaster kind of slopping around really, really well. Those were really, really loud on camera, even though they weren't loud in real life. And people thought that was really funny. They kept calling it, paleo ASMR. But we also did things like campfire streams and a couple of cooking streams and stuff like that, just to show people what life is like in the field, because I think a lot of members of the public wonder about what is it like to dig up dinosaurs? What does daily life feel like out in the field? And it was an honor to be able to share that with the audience. And to use any noise reduction equipment for wind noise. I've got a nice fuzzy cover for the microphone, and that seems to work wonders. It was intensely windy in Wyoming this past summer. I guess as it usually is in Wyoming for anybody who's done field work there. But that seemed to work pretty well. I would say that one of the most important investments you can make is a good microphone. Arguably, the audio is even more important than the video, or even sometimes the signal quality. And so make sure if you're going to be doing some live streaming, you get a decent microphone and you have some sort of wind protection for it if you're going to be broadcasting from the field. And yeah, do you usually go to Utah for live digs, ask Eric, or are there other notable locations that you go to? So this summer it was Wyoming and Utah. I also did a live stream from Berlin Ichthyosaur State Park in Nevada, just kind of visiting, didn't really do any field work there. Yeah, and I would love to be able to do some field work also in places like Montana, New Mexico. So we'll see what this next summer brings. But so far, yeah, working with Ethan Cowgill and his crew in Wyoming, and then Jim Kirkland and Don DeBlue with the Utah Geological Survey in Utah. Also in the past, I've done a whole bunch of different museum live streams. Back in 2021, I did a almost nationwide road trip visiting different museums and fossil sites, put places like the Field Museum in Chicago, or Ashfall Fossil Beds State Park in Nebraska, and scores of others, broadcasting from the museum displays and basically giving people a live tour with paleontologist commentary of this. And those were very popular as well, and a wonderful opportunity to do some outreach and education. Oh yeah. Any other questions? I'm not sure how long we're supposed to go with this. I guess we've got the room to ourselves right now. I don't think we're going to get bumped out of here, but we'll see. Anyway, I also want to ask if anybody was able to make it to the actual physical SVP meeting this year. How was it? That museum in Cincinnati is the repository for our fossils from Wyoming from this summer. And I'm going to be visiting there at some point. I've heard Cincinnati's a lovely town, and I'm really excited to see those there in the collections once they get prepped. So yeah, how was the meeting, or how has the virtual meeting been so far? I haven't really had a chance to watch any other talks. And Eric says, I loved it. It was my very first SVP ever, and it was overwhelming at first, but it was a great experience. That is really cool. I remember my first SVP, 2013 in LA. Oh man. Being an undergrad there, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, meeting all of these paleontologists that I'd grown up seeing in documentaries and later read their papers, and it was quite the experience. Yeah. I'm really excited to be able to attend SVP next year in Minneapolis. Hopefully it will not be the same weekend as TwitchCon. But yeah, and I'm excited to maybe share some actual metrics and some survey results, trying to get demographic data and quotes from people about the outreach that I'm doing on Twitch. 1.5-minute video, nice to summarize it. Nice, Kensu. Wow. I'll see if I can check that out in a bit. Yeah. In fact, let me copy that text there for after the meeting. Copy link. Good. And Patrick says, do you worry or consider the public release for showing people on stream? Do you have people sign waivers to acknowledge their streaming presence? I don't. We've had pretty small crews, and it's kind of like a handshake agreement kind of a deal. Yeah, just try to be responsible about it, and not do anything too crazy. At some point, the kind of the necessity for doing science outreach and getting the public interested, that can make it so that we're that's what we're really enthusiastic about, if that makes sense. Yeah, I've been on field crews before where there's no kind of legal anything, no waivers or anything like that. And then I've been on other field crews where you've got to sign all kinds of paperwork and go through a background check and all this other stuff. So we were pretty casual about it, but I'm definitely not opposed to doing things like waivers and stuff like that. If that's what the institution behind it, the museum or the laboratory, requires, then there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Let's see. Any other questions or anything? I'm having fun. I hope you are too. I am kind of wondering if anybody's not chimed in here in chat yet, just kind of lurking, as we would say on Twitch. How many of you are familiar with Twitch in the first place, as paleontologists? If you either have or have not heard of Twitch, I'd love to hear either way if you'd like to type into the chat. Not sure how many people are in the chat right now, but yeah, let me know. Have you or have you not heard of Twitch? Just curiosity's sake. This is new to me, says Kensu. Good to hear. Very nice. Yeah, I know that I was not familiar with the platform until I met a friend during COVID, and this was, I decided, hey, this might be a really, really excellent platform to do true outreach, to reach a new audience, people who don't go to that platform looking for science, and then they stumble upon it and they're hooked. It's basically how This whole thing is gone from me. And Patrick says, I did some rudimentary streaming in 2018, 2019 on Twitch. My degree program took too much time and mental energy. I get that. Oh boy. I want to do more in the future, but need to graduate first. I get that. Yeah, one of our fellow panelists on the TwitchCon science panel, Melissa, she goes by Volcano Doc on Twitch. She's a volcanologist. And she says that she would not have graduated. She would not have gotten her doctorate at all if it hadn't been for the support that she got from her Twitch community. She streams volcanology on Twitch, and that's always a good time. So I thought that was pretty special, that as scientists, having a community like that, and people to do science communication too, that could be really important for mental health and also for fundraising as well, like it was for my crew in Wyoming this summer. Jeremy says, I listen to people who are artists working on their illustrations on Twitch while I work on my thesis. Very nice. Twitch can be a great platform for just kind of listening while you're doing other things. It can be pretty calming like that. And Scott R. Johnson says, all the streaming I've done is on YouTube personally. Yeah, I have not done any streaming on YouTube so far, but that is another platform for doing live streams. And it's very similar to Twitch in a lot of ways. Yeah. People associate YouTube mostly with recorded videos. And I think that is the majority of YouTube's viewership. But they also have a live streaming section too. And so if your museum or university lab or other institution already has a presence on YouTube, that might be a good avenue if you would like to start live streaming, if anybody's considering doing that as a means of science outreach. Jack says, I have heard of Twitch, but I haven't really dived into it much. Yeah. Your talk has certainly opened my eyes up to the possibilities for communicating my own fieldwork experiences in Canada. Excellent. That makes me really happy to hear. It means this talk has been worthwhile. So thank you for that feedback. Yeah. And is that Bobby Ebelhar there? How you doing, Bobby? Holy cow. Says lurk. I've done charity fundraising on Twitch and participated in the Dino Nerds for Black live stream in 2020. Very cool. How did I not know about this? That's awesome. Maybe that was before my time on Twitch. It's been awesome to see your channel grow. Thank you, Bobby. I really appreciate that. I hope you've been doing well. We worked together back in the Judith River up at Rudyard many moons ago. And yeah, it's wonderful to hear from you again. Patrick says, any suggestions for how to build a community beyond streaming regularly? Oh boy. Yeah, I'm not necessarily the right person to ask for this because I don't have a huge presence on any other social media sites. Usually people say if you want to grow on Twitch, then you have to leverage YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and everything else. And all that stuff just, I don't find joy in doing that. And thus I'm not very good at it. So most of the growth and in my Twitch channel has been organically on the Twitch platform. But yeah, all those other platforms are great ways to try and grow a following like that. Yeah. I might be uniquely poorly positioned to give you any good advice there, unfortunately. Yeah. Oh, and that event, Bobby says we threw it together at the last second. Didn't have a lot of advertising. Gotcha. Well, if there's another one of those coming up, let me know and we'll get the word out. Yeah. Anyway, coming up on 50 minutes now. This is great. I'm enjoying the Q&A here. I hope you are too. I'm curious about how many people are watching right now. On the Twitch platform, I have, they give you live data on the number of viewers and everything else. Feeling a little bit in the dark here. Yeah. But if anybody else has got any questions or anything like that, or anything in the I talked that they were confused about or might disagree with. I know sometimes science communication can be a heady topic, and people have got different opinions about it. So perfectly open to hearing about that as well. Yeah, we're all scientists here. We can be civil. All right. Well, if that's about it, give you a few more minutes or seconds at least to type things in if anybody's furiously trying to type out a message. But if that's it, I think I might wrap this up in a sec. Oh, there we go. Scott wants to know, have you done any experimenting with doing games on your channel? A little bit, Scott. Yeah, yeah. I'm not much of a video game person. I've never really been that interested in video games, which I know is strange for Twitch because people associate Twitch with gaming. That is the games streaming platform. But I have done a few games here and there. There's one that I really like called Saurian. Some of you are probably familiar with that. And that's basically like a Hell Creek dinosaur simulator. You play as a dromaeosaurid or triceratops now. Running around in the Hell Creek environment. It's really, really well rendered. They tried to base everything they could on the actual science, from the weather to the foliage to the behavior of the dinosaurs and their appearance. It's really exquisite. Very small game at this point. But man, do I enjoy that. It's probably been about a year since I've played it, but every once in a blue moon, my community will twist my arm to the point where we'll all play a game. And that's a wonderful one because there's always all kinds of opportunities for talking about the actual science behind it. So like everything that I do on stream, it's an excuse to actually talk about fossil science. I've also played a little bit of Dinosaur Fossil Hunter, which is a fun, slightly goofy, but very fun and wholesome, like dinosaur excavation simulator. The team from that actually reached out to me and gave me an advanced copy and asked if I would play that live, and that was pretty cool as well. It is a little bit heartwarming to see a video game that's trying to simulate our experience as vertebrate paleontologists. So yeah, I found that kind of touching. It's a fun game. And then also I did a little bit of Prehistoric Kingdom as well, which is like a zoo management game. Also with really well rendered, relatively authentic dinosaurs and other fossil organisms. So that was a lot of fun as well. But I don't necessarily enjoy playing video games all that much. So it's not something that I do all that often. And there are frankly just too many other things to talk about in a given live stream that it's kind of rare that I get into games at all. Yeah. And thank you, Kenshu, for letting me know where the recording will be posted at. Excellent. Appreciate that. Yeah. And oh yeah, and Eric Games Prehistoric Kingdom. Oh yeah. Excellent. I actually did a review, a video review of Prehistoric Kingdom right when it came out, because that team also sent me an advanced copy. And yeah, it's fun. I don't think I actually talked about the game all that much as I did about, I give this whole spiel about being at SVP in 2013 and watching the Dino-Kairos talk. Does anybody remember that big reveal back then? Oh man, that was magical. Dino-Kairos is one of the creatures in the game, and yeah, yeah. Anywho, yeah. Well, we are approaching 55 minutes right now after I started. So I think they're probably going to kick us out of this room pretty soon. But I really enjoyed this, everybody. I hope you have too. Well, I'll give it one more minute for questions, and then I think I'll wrap up. It's been a real treat. Thank you, Chairman Wells. Let me show you maybe a couple of other things too. This is something that I was really proud of. And something that I did, a project that was all live on stream in summer of 2020. It was July of 2020. Our Alvarezsaur from the Hell Creek, Trurarchunkus, was published. And yeah, my first ever dinosaur where I'm an author on the publication. And I decided that later on I was going to sculpt a life reconstruction of this animal and then 3D print it. So I did all of that live on stream, and it was a wonderful opportunity to talk about how we learn about new species of dinosaur, how we excavate them, how we publish on them, and how we reconstruct them to try and bring them to life. So this was a project that I was particularly proud of. Yeah. Anyway, Eric says, thank you for the talk. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching and listening, and for your feedback and your enthusiasm. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and end this. So thank you, everybody, and feel free to track me down on Twitch, and we'll talk there. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.